Hello and welcome to the Searchlight. My name is Matt. It's been a few months since the last video, but I now have another 10 games to show you that you can help bring to Steam by showing your support on their pages. Since I started this series, I have sifted through over 400 Greenlight games and have picked out the ones that I feel best deserve a place on Steam. Some of the games featured on the show have since been accepted onto Steam, including Maya's Matter, which is currently available for purchase, and Routine, which is coming later this year. The latest batch of games were accepted on the 15th of January, so congratulations to all of the developers who have been accepted, including those for Akinero Demon Hunters, DLC Quest, and Make, which were all featured on the Searchlight. As always, head over to the pages in the description to give them a thumbs up to show your support. Now, let's move on to the games. First up, we have a game that mixes stealth and parkour called Purge. The game has an interesting art style which is somewhat similar to Borderlands, but with some quite dark colour tones. The style reminds me a bit of the PlayStation Vita game Gravity Rush, and also Jet Set Radio to a certain extent. The gameplay looks to be inspired by Mirror's Edge, offering a first-person parkour experience in which you'll have to avoid enemies as best you can. Unfortunately, there isn't much more information about the game around. There's only a paragraph of text on the Greenlight page, and the Facebook page shows very little activity from the developer, so it might be a while before we see more of this one. Nonetheless, it looks to be a fun game, and you should show your support if you agree. Next up is a game suggested to me a few months ago by Aaron Foster from Luna Software, who are currently working on Routine. Inquisitor is an old-school style RPG in style of games like Diablo and Baldur's Gate, featuring over 100 hours of gameplay and over 5,000 pages of text. The game is out now on GOG.com and Zura, but I'm sure we could do with a few great old-school RPGs on Steam. According to this Greenlight page, the game has been in development for 10 years, allowing the game to include a lot of variety in weapons, armor, spells, and enemies. It's a huge game that will no doubt keep RPG fans engrossed for a long time, and so if it tickles your fancy, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. When you're going through a lot of games trying to pick out the best ones, sometimes you can almost overlook one when just looking at its cover. DreadOut was one of those games I was going to ignore, but then I watched the trailer. DreadOut is a third-person horror game inspired by the Fatal Frame series. The game is set in Indonesia with a fairly cliched story, placing you in the shoes of a high school student called Linda, who has wandered away from her vacation spot. Like in Fatal Frame, you must use your camera to interact with ancient ghosts and solve puzzles. If you're still not sold on this one, I recommend taking a look at the YouTube channel for 4Player Podcast, who have some massively popular and hilarious videos from the Fatal Frame games. I often wonder what will follow Amnesia and Slender as the next big indie horror hit, and this could well be it. Next up is an interesting physics-based sandbox game called Crashtastic. In this game you are tasked with completing various goals using whatever physics-based contraptions you can come up with. You use a simplistic editor tool to put together vehicles, rockets, and other things to complete goals that range from crossing a finish line to landing a jump, and everything in between. The alpha version of this game is available right now from the developer's website, and the full game is expected to be released sometime this year. Behind its very simplistic looks, the game looks incredibly fun, and the developer is planning some ambitious features for the full game, including a level editor, story mode, and asynchronous multiplayer. Game number 5 is one that I've been keeping an eye on over at Reddit for a while now, as the developer has often posted his progress over on the game dev subreddit. Legend of Dungeon is a co-op roguelike beat-em-up presented through pixel art and featuring some rather awesome dynamic lighting effects. The developers are hoping to release the game sometime in early 2013 after they successfully kickstarted the project, reaching over 600% of their funding target. This is a great looking game from a 2-man team, and personally it's been pretty inspiring to follow the progress of this game over the past few months, so I really hope this one gets accepted. Next up is an interesting blend of first-person shooter, survival horror, and sandbox gameplay. to create a game called Centration. Centration is a futuristic multiplayer sandbox game in which players will have to work together and take different stations in order to run a spaceship. Survival is key, and because you are playing with other human players, you never know what might happen, especially when equipment malfunctions. Unfortunately, there isn't much footage of the game so far, despite the target release date being late 2013. Nonetheless, it sounds brilliant, so show your support on their page. Next up is a game by the developers of Nitronic Rush. Distance is a vehicular racing game with great looking neon visuals. The game is really fast paced and introduces some interesting mechanics like the ability to fly and shift gravity onto different paths. You can play single player or multiplayer online over LAN or in split screen in several modes including race, capture the flag and stunt modes. The game will also include a map editor and modding tools which will certainly help to increase the longevity of the game. The game will be released on Windows, Mac and Linux in the summer of 2013 and has already been successfully funded on Kickstarter. One of my favourite parts of the game, looking at the trailers, is the lack of heads-up display, as all the information is actually found on the back of the car. Next up is a game that I feel looks like it could have been made by the team at That Game Company, and that is certainly a compliment. The Last Phoenix is a single-player game for PC and Mac, which runs on the Unreal Engine. The game takes place in an open world, with you taking the role of a phoenix who must restore the world back to life. As you fly around, you restore colour to the land and regrow vegetation, but you also need to look out for enemies like hordes of crows and the like. You can find the demo for this game on the Greenlight page via the link in the description, and while you're there, take a look at the free trailers and give it a thumbs up. Usually I don't tend to enjoy games in which you play as a spherical object, but InFlux caught my eye as a game that I think would be very enjoyable. It's a puzzle game that mixes exploration and puzzle platforming elements in a great looking world. The game runs on the Unreal Engine and will be released on Windows and Mac, and eventually iOS as well. It looks like an interesting game, and so I recommend you go to the Greenlight page, take a look at the trailer and decide if you want to give it your support. The final game of this episode is the brilliantly named Super Amazing Wagon Adventure. While it may not look like much, this is an incredibly fun looking game which was recently released on Desura and Xbox Live Indie Games. The game is inspired by the classic educational game Oregon Trail and mixes it up with a roguelike element. Essentially, it's a shoot-'em-up adventure game in which you must try to get to the end of the game with at least one living character. It sounds simple, but throw in things like procedural events and options with multiple paths, and you get something truly interesting. Something that amazes me with this game is that it is the developer's first commercial game, and the price is incredibly low at just £2 or $3 on Desura. Show your support on the Greenlight page via the link in the description. So those are the 10 games for the 4th episode of the Searchlight. If you have any game suggestions, please don't hesitate to leave them in the comments or tweet us at CWGrenades. But for now, that's all from me, so thanks for watching. Please like, favourite and subscribe for more of this, and I will see you next time.